Welcome everyone to the Healing Autoimmunity Summit, where you will learn secrets from cutting-edge doctors and wellness experts about how you can restore your health and feel great again. This is your host, Dr. Lisa Barrett, known as the Health Revolutionist, because I know you can fight back and reclaim your good health if you know what steps to take. And today, I'm very excited about our guest. We have an encore visit from Dr. Thomas Lodi. And Dr. Lodi is a maverick in his own right. He is a hero of mine. He has revolutionized the oncology industry with a radical method of healing chronic illness with an integrative, alternative, and nutritional approach for those who are unsatisfied with the modern treatment system. He's the founder of an oasis of healing in Mesa, Arizona. Dr. Lodi, hi, and welcome back.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's a real delight. We had such an interest in your information on my last summit. I had you were one of the experts that people definitely let me know they wanted to hear more from. So I'm thrilled that you're back here today, and our topic today is about autoimmunity, and let's jump right in, Dr. Lodi. I want you to tell us, what you're up to now, and also, what is your take on autoimmunity, and why does it seem like everybody's dealing with this right now?
Well, we come back to the same fundamental delusion that the medical model uses. The paradigm of disease, and that diseases are things that are entities that attack you and get into you, and somehow you got them, and now you have to get rid of them. That whole paradigm is so flawed and so absurd, and it's crazy. It's probably, I liken it to jungle thinking. People in the jungle who think that people get possessed or something like that, and they need to go to the medicine man, to the witch doctor, and get a magic potion. Now the magic potion comes from the pharmacy and all this, and so we're going to get rid of this thing. And this mentality is, because it's the paradigm. That's why you can't succeed. You can't succeed because it's the wrong. You're asking the wrong questions. If you ask the wrong questions, it doesn't matter what the answers are. So, first of all, there's no disease. The body is always doing what it needs to do in order to maintain functional integrity in the face of adverse situations. And that's what the body does. It's called homeostasis. And all biological entities do this, whether it's a bacterium or an oak tree or a bear. It doesn't matter. All biological organisms are always engaged in homeostasis to maintain their function. And so, and that's how we're hardwired by nature. So the mere thought that the body would attack itself because it somehow went crazy is just an indication of the absolute irreverent disrespect and blasphemy of science. It just clearly doesn't understand that the body would never attack itself. It can't. The body will only do what's necessary. So if the body's doing something, we have to understand what it is it's doing and why, and then remove the cause. Get rid of the reason why. If it's doing the high blood pressure dance, why is the blood pressure elevated? Oh, it's elevated because your arteries are narrowed. Well, why are they narrowed? Oh, because I've been eating pizzas and cheeseburgers. Oh, okay. So what's the reason? Should I take a drug to dilate my arteries, or should I stop eating that way, cleanse my body, and allow my arteries to get back to health? And then guess what? The body won't need to increase the blood pressure to maintain the blood flow anymore, because the arteries will be compliant and opening and wider. Anyway, so with autoimmune, what happens in autoimmune is that, again, it's mistaken. they look at it, the conventional people look at it as if now you have antibodies and your ANA is up, and and they have all different names for it. They have lupus, and they have Sjogren's, and they have Graves' disease, and Hashimoto's, and rheumatoid arthritis, and there's all these different names. And if you look at how they actually come up with a diagnosis, they have a checklist, and you have to meet a certain number of criteria under each checklist to do it, right? And then they give it a name, as if that mattered. I mean, in the end, the only real treatment they have is steroids. And in the end, I mean, they really, or sometimes they use some chemotherapy called methotrexate in certain conditions, but they usually use it comes down to steroids. And so let's look at that. Let's look at what that means. What does a steroid actually do? What's the fundamental effect of a steroid? It is a powerful anti-inflammatory. Oh, so why doesn't a bell go on in the heads of those madmen in the white coats? Why doesn't a bell go off and say, oh, I guess what's happening is there's a chronic systemic inflammatory response. Maybe that's the underlying cause. Oh my gosh. Anyway, they don't think that way. And in fact, that's what's happening. The body is engaged in a chronic systemic inflammatory response. And guess what is the mechanism by which the body produces a inflammatory response? It's called the immune system. And so the immune system is on fire. It's having to deal with something. So our job is to find out what is it dealing with. And when we look at the reality of things, when we go into, we understand that the immune system is, in most cases, of what we call autoimmunity, is that the body is dealing with some sort of hidden or not yet found infection. It could be unfound a dysbiosis in some way or another. There is an increase in yeast, or there's some other pathogenic organisms. We're even finding now that in coronary artery disease, at the very center, at the very bottom of a plaque, which are the little lesions that accumulate in the arteries, there's a nanobacteria, or a very, very small type of bacteria. So there's probably in most what we call autoimmunity, there is a severe dysbiosis, not only of the gut but systemically. And secondarily, there's probably heavy metals. In other words, what we're talking about is there are toxins and imbalance in the body, resulting in an environment that allows the growth of pathogenic organisms. If the body is balanced, if the milieu is appropriate, then you will have only the normal healthy bacteria able to survive. So anyway, it always comes down to the same thing, that what we need to do is that we need to cleanse the body and restore the normal bacteria and reduce inflammation. And the various ways of reducing inflammation naturally are through eating. There's a very good study out of the University of Washington by Dr. Luigi Fontana showing that people who eat raw vegan food, actually all of them have low CRPs, and the CRP is an indication of total body inflammation. It brings their CRP to less than 0.1, undetectable, very, very low. And that's one sure way of doing it. But there are other things. At the center of inflammation are these cytokines in the bodies called NF-kappa beta, etc. They're all reduced with curcumin, with boswellia, with all these botanical herbs that are used in Ayurvedic medicine, that are used in traditional Chinese medicine and naturopathic medicine. So it comes down to the same thing, and that's why there is only one, quote, disease, unquote, and that is called the accumulation of toxins. And so it's called toxemia.
So,
okay.
Dr. Lodi, I know you're blowing some people's minds here, because first of all, you say there is no disease, and then you say there is no autoimmunity, and there's no such thing as the body attacking itself. But what I'm getting out of what what you're saying here, you're kind of boiling it down to these three factors as being causal factors of any disease, if I'm following you, and that is inflammation, infection, and toxic factors. So
Yes.
these being your causal factors and tracing it back to, well, you've got inflammation, but why, rather than treating with the steroid, getting rid of the cause of the inflammation and maybe taking a look at eating all those cheeseburgers and pizzas that are causing the inflammatory factors and the toxicity levels in the body. So I get you here. I hear what you're saying, and I know that your specialty your focus has been around treating cancer and helping people restore their bodies from this. What is the difference here between being in a cancerous state and an autoimmune state?
Well, the difference in any condition actually is where the focus of the accumulated toxins happens to be, and what is being challenged the most by these processes, these underlying processes. For example, like we were mentioning a moment ago, if the accumulation of plaque and other things is occurring in the arteries more quickly, and it's causing an inflammatory reaction there more quickly than it's destroying the mitochondria, which would bring on what we call cancer, then the person will have high blood pressure. And usually what we see is if you can view, get this image in your mind of a tree, and the tree has a system of roots, and then there's a single trunk, and then there are multiple branches. Now the roots represent eating inappropriate for the human anatomy and physiology, going to bed late, being exposed to EMF, having toxic relationships, etc. So you look at all the roots there that are contributing to the trunk of the tree, and the trunk of the tree is an accumulation of toxins, or it's called toxicity, and then you have the branches going off, and the branches are the different names, whether it's autoimmunity, etc. So in autoimmunity versus cancer, to get back to your question specifically, in autoimmunity, what has happened is that we haven't yet seen enough destruction of the cells. Now, see, what happens in cancer is that the little organelles within the cell that are called mitochondria that produce energy at a very efficient rate get destroyed. Enough of them get destroyed and become dysfunctional so that the cell has to resort to glycolysis, or what is also known as fermentation, in order to stay alive, in order to function. And that's exactly what they do, because they're hardwired to stay alive. And so they do that, and when you have chronic fermentation, that's literally what is cancer. But, so let's say what's happening is that hasn't happened yet, but what's happening is that it's triggering the anti-inflammatory response systemic. So autoimmunity usually comes before we would get the cancer, or other than. It's another branch that goes off. And what happens is that, let's say because of the toxicity, you have some sort of mutated a yeast or fungus or bacteria that is stimulating the immune system to go against it. And so we now look and we see, the ANA is high, and a double-stranded DNA, the antibody to double-stranded DNA is up, and that's because of the inflammatory response destroying certain cells, not getting the mitochondria. So it really depends on how the accumulated toxins affect the body, which will determine how the body responds. So in the autoimmune disease, it develops, the part of the inflammatory system that gets enraged or inflamed is the one that's producing antibodies. The B cells are more at work rather than the T cells. So it's really, really one condition. So again, what we need to do is clean out the garbage and reduce the requirement for the inflammatory response. And you'll see that it goes away. I mean, there are so many scholarly articles on curcumin and its anti-inflammatory effects, and boswellia, and pepperine, and ginger. I mean, it's if you look on PubMed, which is considered the conventional, the allopathic Bible, if you look on it, you'll find that there are literally thousands of scientifically published articles on this. So you can remove and eliminate the inflammation. But again, if you haven't cleansed out the toxicities, then it's like pouring gasoline and pouring water on the fire. You're gonna not you might get periods where the water wins out, and then you'll get the gasoline winning out on the next month. So I don't know if I answered. Sorry.
Well, you did answer the question very well, but I want to touch on it again and make sure that our listeners really get this, because I get this question so much, and I've promised so many people that I was going to ask you in particular about this. And people, will say to me, I have autoimmunity. Am I more likely to develop cancer? And from the scenario you just described, well, if you don't change your ways, the answer would be yes, because they are actually on that progressive journey with the autoimmunity on their way to developing cancer. Is that correct? Unless they change their lifestyle.
Yes, and what's interesting is that we notice that autoimmunity is predominantly in what we call first world or civilized countries, and much less so. When you get down to the indigenous people, and the reason I qualify that a little bit is because unfortunately now the American lifestyle has been metastasized to the rest of the world, and so now we're finding, unfortunately, McDonald's and Burger Kings and Starbucks everywhere now. So we're starting to bring the first world conditions into the third world, but by and large, it's always been that, and it's always been due to the fact of lifestyle.
So when you talk about toxemia and toxic factors, can you explain to our listeners a little bit more what are the sources of all these toxic factors? Where are they getting into these?
Well, yes. If you understand that the body has 100 trillion cells approximately, no one really knows, and these cells are swimming in a fluid called the extracellular matrix or the extracellular fluid. Cells are not in contact directly with the blood. The blood fans out into little things called arterioles and then into capillaries. And this the capillary step that where the diffusion takes place. There's just a very thin membrane, and all the oxygen and whatever else is in the blood will diffuse across this membrane. The red blood cells don't, but the other stuff diffuses across the membrane, and the waste products diffuse back, and they're taken out through the veins, the venules, and then the veins and back through, and also secondarily through the lymphatic system. And so the lymphatic system and the veins are draining it, and the arterial system is supplying it. So the cells are swimming in this extracellular fluid, or it's an ocean of a fluid. And so what is in that fluid? Well, what's in that fluid is what came in through the arteries and what did not get eliminated by the lymphatics and the veins. And so if someone is sitting on the couch a lot, not doing much, sitting in front of a computer, and they're not contracting their muscles, then they are not eliminating as much, because veins can only do their job through muscle contraction. And if people are being exposed through breathing, either they're smoking, or they're in the middle of Tokyo or Mexico City or Los Angeles or New York, and they're breathing in these things, so they're getting it through their lungs. If they're applying if they're applying toxic chemicals to like makeup and perfumes and deodorants and hair products and all those things that's coming in through their skin. And then, of course, in their food, if they're eating food that is not organic, and not organic simply means not poisoned. They didn't put pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and insecticides and all those things. It's funny, those just happens to rhyme with suicide, genocide, homicide, you know. So clearly not the side you want to be on, right? So eating all these, so those are the main sources, and now we have the new modern toxicity coming through EMF, you know, and different sorts of electromagnetic frequencies that are disrupting cellular processes and everything, which are even inhibiting more their ability to clean out this fluid. So anyway, if you can keep this fluid clean and pristine, then the cells will function optimally. And if it gets dirty, they don't. Now, the way the body heals, the fundamental way that the body heals is through a process known as inflammation. So do we need inflammation? Absolutely. Without it, we'd be dead within a few minutes. So we need to have an inflammatory response. But it should be an acute inflammatory response. It gets rid of, I bang my finger. It gets red hot, swollen, and painful. And in a few days, it's healed. And it's that process that heals it. But if I keep banging my finger, I keep smoking, I keep eating, I keep doing those things that are biochemically hammering my body, and then in other words, I'm stimulating the inflammatory response. So I develop chronic inflammation, and then we have the many phases of chronic inflammation, and one of them is what we call autoimmunity.
Yeah. So you have also mentioned as one of these toxic factors, you mentioned toxic relationships. And I know in traditional medicine discounts the emotional aspect and the spiritual aspect in this healing journey. And in my particular background of Chinese medicine, we very much take that into account as having equal importance to healing the physical body. And so, you know, what's your take on the emotional aspect and the spiritual aspect?
Okay, so the mechanism by which the environment affects the cell and which genes are expressed and not, which also means how the cell is going to function, is determined by again the epigenetics or the environment around the cell. Now we know that chemicals like normal chemicals such as, you know, estrogen, testosterone, cortisone, glucose, all those things, proteins, all those things have receptors. The cells have receptors on them, and those receptors trigger a cellular response. So, and what we now know is that these receptors are 10 times more reactive to energetic stimuli than they are to chemical stimuli. And so 10 times more, okay? So now if we understand that thoughts, emotions, which are stimulating, which are an energetic form, are actually 10 times more powerful than the chemical ones, we understand that you just by simply being, I mean, you've heard of people being scared to death. That actually can happen. Let me give you another example. Two women, childbearing age, let's say 30 years old, move in and become roommates, and within 30 to 60 days, they're menstruating at the same time. They didn't decide it. They didn't plan it. They didn't talk about it. It happened, and that's because of the powerful effect of the emotions and thoughts, which are generating energetic impulses. And so if you have a toxic relationship, you're cheating on your spouse, you're cheating on your boss, doing anything that's literally just dishonest, or you're fearful all the time of a spouse, or you're in continual rage, having fights and things like that, your cells are being bombarded by these toxic energies, which are stimulating cellular responses. So yes, that's the effect of emotion.
Right. So, Dr. Lodi, you're the founder of an Oasis of Healing in Mesa, Arizona. You're also involved in some clinics in Thailand. Can you tell our listeners about these centers and what's going on there, and who are these centers for? Who are you helping?
Okay, sure. In Arizona, we opened about 11 years ago in Mesa, Arizona, and we have been devoted primarily to cancer, but usually the family and the friends that accompany the people have other conditions, and they're usually wanting to get some help while they're there as well. And so, even though we've been focusing on cancer, we do help people with any condition, because remember, there's really only one condition. But although there are some specific things you do for each condition. Anyway, so what we've decided to do now at Oasis is bring in programs for people without cancer, and literally people who don't want to get cancer, and people who have other conditions which are going to eventually lead to it. I mean, some people have a heart attack long before they develop cancer, but it's the same cause. It would have gone into that. So we're going to be opening up the program and be teaching, having lifestyle classes, teaching people how to prepare foods, teaching people what their body is, how it works. It's called the School of Life. It's a pretty amazing program, and we do that, and we couple it with cleansing and some different kinds of interventional IVs like vitamin C and ozone and all the chelation and alpha lipoic acid, and there's a variety of things that we would do, and then of course some of the botanical therapies. But so I brought the same concept to Thailand, and I'm consulting here and teaching doctors in clinics, one in Bangkok and one in Phuket now. That's a little island attached to the mainland of Thailand. And so we're doing the same thing. We're more like in Phuket, it's called Life Co, and we're more like Life Company, Life Co, Life Co Phuket. It's more of wellness. In other words, who needs wellness? Well, everybody, including the cancer person. What is the cancer person asking, really? They're asking, how do I get well again? How do I resolve and restore my health? And so regardless of the condition by which you walk through which gets you to walk through the door, it's a lot of the same things are done. So that's what we're doing. And the other one is in Bangkok, and that one is, again, primarily cancer, but open to other conditions as well.
Okay, so anyone who's interested, who's dealing with an issue, whether it's autoimmunity or cancer, or they just want to stay healthy and not get these situations going on, are candidates for your clinics, either in Arizona or in Thailand.
Correct.
Okay. So tell us about your websites.
Well, yeah, the website in for the U.S. is anoasisofhealing.com, but sometimes people forget the and they wind up at Oasis of Hope or some other sort of thing. So we have another something you can type into your browser, and that is stopmakingcancer.com. It's really easy. Stopmakingcancer.com. So you get there, and then that'll tell you how to get in touch with us. Now in Phuket, you can go to lifecophuket.com, and that will take you on to it. And that website does not specifically address all these things. It's just more of a general website, but you would get in touch with them, and they would be able to arrange either. What I do with most people, because they're coming from outside of the country, whether it's in Phuket or in the U.S., they're coming from other states or whatever. So what I do is you talk to one of our ladies there that help understand what you're looking for, and then I usually have a Skype call with the person, and that's no charge. If they're thinking of coming, we don't charge for that. That's just part of the process of bringing people in, recruiting. And so I would have a Skype call. We would discuss the conditions. I would then give them a plan and then Clotilde would at our center in the U.S. would then apply fees to that and discuss it so the patient knows before they're coming what the fees will be and how long they're going to stay and what they're going to go through and that sort of thing.
And oasisofhealing.com or stopmakingcancer.com or
lifecophuket.com.
Oh, lifecophuket.com. And that's life,
Yeah,
LIFECOPHUKET.com.
Correct.
Yeah. Dr. Lodi, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's been such a pleasure having you back, and I'm sure that you're going to have people contacting you. You do have a gift offer that people can receive. I'll be including that link in the emails that our audience has received, so they should be watching for that. And just, keep up the great work you're doing, Dr. Lodi. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and get your take on things.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and invite me back again. I love your work as well.
Yes, and thank you everyone out there for joining us here at the Healing Autoimmunity Summit. And keep tuning in to discover more secrets on how you can take charge, fight back, and reclaim your good health. And until next time, take care of your health, because without it, you have nothing. Bye for now.